Let's attempt, why not, a temporary wrap-up of the area of acts and facts with a few little, trust will prove to be somewhat explosive, imponderables, having to do with some of what we've already been talking about. Consider this. The basis is pretty simple. So let's try and do the basis simply. What would be a man's view, a man's thoughts, his feel, his expectation of life and other people's behavior if, as a modern contemporary man, if all of that, his thoughts, feels, expectations, were based strictly on his direct experience with their acts, as opposed to, or with no input of facts purporting to report on their acts. Can you see today, to say contemporary man, that there's very few meaningful exceptions of groups of people on this planet now. But nowadays there is a distinct difference that has been blurred and no one considers it, but from a subversive plain view there remains enough of a distinct difference in the same way of a difference between primary and secondary activities and between acts and facts themselves, to see that your everyday, unnoticed thoughts, your feelings, your expectations of what's going to happen in your modern, everyday, contemporary life is not based on your direct, it's not solely based by any means, on your direct experience with other people. It's based upon your expectations, your fears, your dreams, is now in good part based upon the news reports, the facts, the gossip that has been relayed not just to you personally, but it goes out in a wide range. And it purports to report on other people's acts. If an ordinary person heard this, and assuming an ordinary person heard any of that, they would say, well, it's necessary. Let me make it simple. At least I told you it was simple. How about the fears that people have? Most of you that have ever been seeing this tape, exposed to this, you live in a city. You're not hermits, and you probably live in an urban area, or you work in an urban area, and there is now, on an individual level, with everybody, a certain amount of apprehension, shall we say. Being mugged, your car being broken into, your house being burglarized. And then on a wider scale is the fear that some other country will attack, that opposing political philosophy, some madman somewhere with enough of an army may set off some sort of armed conflict. There is simply, you don't even notice it. Because if you were ordinary, you would say, well, this is only rational, that I am concerned. I do not go out and walk down the street at 1 o'clock if I had to work late. I am not going out there and walk down in a certain area where I work in town, because to begin with, it's not simply my imagination. There has been in the last 2 weeks reported 17 people mugged and attacked down there. I understand that. But back to this more plain and direct thinking. The people who say that, if we ask them, well, have you ever been mugged? No. Have you ever been attacked physically? No. Now, this is no comment regarding not looking after your own welfare, but notice how much of your life in here is now colored, and I do not mean that in a arbitrary, negative way that in some way you or anyone else have been deluded. But look at how much of this, your thoughts of, your feelings about, your expectations of life, what a large part is based not on personal experience, I jump back again and play the ordinary part. An ordinary person telling you, say, well, yeah, maybe. But that's part of being contemporary, being modern, being educated, is to keep up with such as that. Because if I were not attuned to what's going on in my city, in the area where I work downtown, I might act like some kind of naive idiot and some night decide to work late and just come strolling out of there at midnight when the streets, by many reports, are just filled with potential muggers and attackers are just waiting for some boob like me to walk out. It's a good thing. It is a good thing that I can learn from that to which I did not have to be subjected initially. In other words, it's good, for instance, that the news, although I don't like to wallow in self-pity and I don't want to spend my life living behind barbed wire. I'm still speaking for ordinary people. But they say it is a good thing that the news does report these kinds of public misdemeanors and felonious assaults on people so that I know how to look after myself better. It's a good thing, ordinary intelligence might be saying to me. It's a good thing that what I hear you saying is not exactly the way I live. Because if we had to learn, if we had to operate strictly by experience, then what you're saying, ordinary intelligence might say to me if it heard this, what I hear you saying is that I would have to be mugged and attacked down in this certain area to ever think about it. Back to the simple, plain attempt to look and to think. How much of a person's thoughts about life, your unanalyzed feelings toward just everyday life, your expectations from life, and particularly about other people's behavior, how much of it is based on personal experience nowadays? And how much is based, on acts? And how much of it is based upon facts? And again, remember, we're not using facts on the basis that there's any discussion as to their quantitative veracity. A fact is just a report of a purported report, or it might be an actual, specific, truthful, valid report, but a fact is a report about an act. So how much of your life is based upon, how much of your expectations, your dreams, your fears, and much of this goes so fast through your system that it just verges on being, and I say unanalyzed, it just verges on it being so deep-rooted that it's like your sense of gravity, a kind of, let us say, over-the-shoulder, vague fear, apprehension about being alive, or about being in a certain place, or about certain people, about certain times of day. Words you hear, communism, or word for another hostile religion. And again, it's not that the reports you've heard that people have been mugged where you work at night, it's not that the reports are false. That's not even the point. It's to realize that people do not. But for you to realize and to ask yourself, or to realize first, how much of your experience drives your expectations in your field of life, that is, acts, and how much of it is facts, reports, purporting to detail some act that's happened. Can you see the difference? Can you see that there is a distinct difference that is possible here that has quite useful potential for a few people? Think about the difference that the tall people would have toward the short people, or the greens against the purples, or any, but say the tall against the short. If the tall people's feel of the short people were based strictly, solely on their experience with the short people, and it doesn't matter what it is. And as all of you who've listened in for a little while, you know that I'm inferring, surely you know this, I'm not inferring that the tall people are right and the short people are wrong. What would be the difference if the tall people's experience was the sole criteria? If that was the only energy that fed their nervous system, had been their experience with the short people, as opposed to their expectations of the short people were based in good part on reports about the short people, about their acts, perhaps their misdeeds. To the more specific part, if you can see this, it is so obvious. That's why you might think I'm about to skip over some of this, but it's one of these things that if you try to stick somebody's eye closer to it, I'm probably going to get my finger in some of your eyes. It's just a fact. It is just a reality that has nothing to do with three-dimensional operations for the individual. Because it is so intertwined, is why I was trying to play ordinary intelligence's part. If it heard any of this at all, it would just take it as some sort of weird theory. Or it might say, there's some validity to it. But it would try to hear that I was weighting this observation. In other words, as polarized attention has to do, if it's hearing what seems to be new energy, there's some point to it. I mean, there's some sermon here. Ordinary intelligence, if somebody points out and they says, did you know there's something going on that you don't know about in ordinary intelligence? First-class city intelligence may go, well, I love new info. Don't have anything to do, waiting for the movie to start. Okay, let's have it. And you point out something that this person had never noticed. You do know, surely by now, that they take it, even if you spoke in the world's most exemplary monotone, and if you stood deadpan, no gestures, and you talked and it sounded as though it was a digitalized voice, and you apparently put in no expression, tried to withdraw all possible human expression, and you actually in some way, which we're stretching it now, but if you could still convey what struck the person as being new information, not that there are people actually living on Mars, but they're just invisible. I'm talking about the kind of things we're talking about, that you point at something that's going on in life and you describe it in a way they've never heard. You say something like, well, people think so-and-so is going on. They call it such and such, but you could also look at it as being such and such. And you do that in a monotone, deadpan, no hand gestures, and they heard it. They would still hear a sermon. They would hear that it was weighted. The old idea that you hear expressed sometimes, or every now and then I throw out in my own way about, those city proverb, I don't know what else to call it, about people while they're talking saying, well, why would anybody want to preach to the converted? The intent being that you don't try to convince people who are already convinced about something. And of course, even that's weighted because you assume that whoever's saying that, they're trying to convince other people of something worthwhile. I mean, you're not trying to convince somebody of something that is self-defeating or unprofitable or dangerous. And so the line about why would someone preach to the converted, or why would a rational person preach to the converted, it sounds indefensible. It sounds like a bulletproof idea that what rational person would preach to the converted? If you're going to try to convert somebody, you're going to find the unconverted. You're going to find those who need this information. But that's not true. In the city, all sermons are delivered. They preach only to the converted. Because the unconverted wander off. They go out and feed the pigeons. Or they think, boy, I wish they'd cut down. Who was that talking? So, back to what I was trying to get you to consider, is more specifically, not only is this the way things are arranged, that you are driven nowadays by, in good part, reports that you have never experienced. But it's not that that's wrong, which is what ordinary intelligence, if it heard this, would say, well, all right, you're saying we shouldn't do that. You're trying to make some comment that, well, the tall people keep hearing that the short people, if they catch you in the dark, they'll bite you on the ankles, and then when you bend over, they'll try and pick your pocket. You're saying that kind of stuff. You're just saying don't be prejudicial or don't prejudge people. Don't turn around and look at every short person and go, uh-oh, they're going to get me. See, and if I start off and said that's not what I'm saying, that wouldn't do any good, which is another reason why you shouldn't talk to ordinary people. I resent that, all right? Because they cannot, polarized hearing, polarized thought cannot hear what would be truly clinical, truly objective, what would be an independent, a non-polarized notation. Because it hears, that's why I did the little injection that not many of you responded to, but when I said, well, now I don't mean to infer that the tall people are right and the short people are wrong. I could say it the other way around. But the point is, you could say that forever. You could have the world's longest preface, get the most intelligent people in the city and say, I can point out something you've never thought about, something right here, part of your life. And now we'll go, let's hear it. We're all in favor of it. And I said, but first, let me tell you, I'm going to have to divide up. It has to do with one group of people, one type of person, one attitude thinks a certain about another group. Now I'll go, well, yeah, that's kind of the basis of life, I guess. Now, so I'm going to point out, let me tell you right now. In fact, I'm not even going to use specifics. I'm going to say Group X and Group Y. They go, well, maybe you are an intellectual. I like that. And so you preface the bastard for an hour, a day, and you say, now, let me, what I'm going to point out to you, I'm going to use the example. I'm going to say Group X looks at Group Y. But now let me tell you, I could do it the other way around. They go, this is getting more and more close to an objective. I like it. And you say, but I do not infer that one is correct. I do not infer just because what I'm pointing out is not normally seen. That doesn't mean that the way people normally look at it, the view I'm fixing to expand, or the view to which I'm about to offer an alternative, it does not mean that the first view is bad and this one's good. They go, this is getting so intellectual, my pockets are beginning to itch. And if I was really dumb, I'd think, boy, I got me a crowd. I wish I had some snake oil. I got a crowd. Now, so all right, now you're sure you're not going to take, when I point out this new view, you're not going to take that as being the right view or the better view. No. No, just tell us. But now I want to insist, when I say, all right, X always looks at Y as being such and such, and yet, just listen right quick, there's another way to look at it. But now when I do this, don't think that the old view, the ordinary view, is in any way less than agreeable, good, functional, proper. All right, we agree. Do you promise me that you'll agree? Now you're going to miss it. Yeah, we promise. They can't live up to the promise. Because then if I stopped all that and I went into the monotone of the deadpan and said, all right, here it is. No. Those who heard anything, of course, some of them after that, by the way, would wander off or they'd go and look for the peanuts and the pigeons. They'd just lose all interest. But if some of them tried to listen, they would still hear, they wouldn't hear, no. They'd hear somewhere, no. And this being of course, every time we talk, there's an example for that, but tonight is just a prime example. That's why I stopped to do that again. If you point out to people, and you said, do you realize that a large part of your life, your expectations, your fears, the way you operate, the way you motivate, where you walk downtown, the kind of people you look at, the kind of body language, the kind of sounds to which you react, the time of day it is, names you hear, sounds of voices, accents you hear, people behind you, the way somebody's dressed down the next block. All of those things seem to be cluing in a certain way, the way that you orient yourself and that you move through contemporary life. And they go, yeah, no, you have to. I didn't say you don't have to, but Follow me, people. And they go, all right, we're following. But do you realize, can you think just for a second, just real plainly, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to make you get mugged. It's not going to make you close your eyes and go jump into a den of thieves. Just think. Try this, just think. Do you realize all the things that frighten you or that seem to properly orient you in your navigation through contemporary city life? How little of those things you have actually experienced. Yeah, you're right. I've never been mugged. I never had a short person bite my ankles. I never had a tall person come up and stand above me and hit me on top of the head. I've never had a shabbily dressed person attack me and try to steal my money. I've never had a real rich-looking person see me and laugh at me for being poor to the point that I had a heart attack. I have never been mugged late at night. I've never been attacked first thing in the morning by a real hungry, homeless person who was dying for an Egg McMuffin. I've never had all those things happen. But that doesn't mean I've seen it's gone too far. Because they take it as a weight that I am in some way either tried to point out, wait a minute, you worry too much. That's what you're saying, isn't it? No. Aren't you saying I shouldn't be so prejudiced? I shouldn't, every time I see a tall person, I shouldn't go, uh-oh. The latest statistics say that 95% of the muggings done in this area are by tall people. You're just saying that I shouldn't prejudge all tall people. Jesus. Why do they even do this? Do you see? It's not that it's wrong, but there is a worthwhile, if any of this is worthwhile to you personally, there is a most worthwhile center to this. To realize how little, or to look at it another way, when I say how little, if you're listening with even a piece of your old mind, you take that as being prejudicial, like, oh, you're attacking me. Let me go back to, of course, most of you are supposed to be better than that anyway, but since we're having to deal with language, I have to face up to what I've done myself, just in case any children are tuned in and mistaking this for Pee-wee's Playhouse. Instead of me saying how little, let's go back to the way I was going to originally, or did present it. Consider the difference that you don't normally see. The difference between what you have actually experienced in life. Everything. Nothing in specific. I'm just picking out the ones that are easy to talk about. Like, have you ever been mugged? Have you ever been attacked by a tall person? Has a small person ever bitten you or even come up close and even said, would you raise your pants leg a little? Has any of that ever happened? It's consider how your life is being driven in two ways. One is acts and one is facts. One is experience and one is reports. One is experience, one is expectations. And we're not saying whether expectations are founded or ill-founded. We're not. Now, why does everybody pick on that? We've never said that whether your experience is founded or ill-founded. You know, you could be some kind of nut and actually been mugged before and forgot about it. Or got mugged one time and thought maybe you were raped. Or got mugged and thought maybe somebody just asked what time it was. You know, who knows what kind of crazy people are listening to this. That's another story. Not crazy people, but everybody always questions the facts. That facts can be misinterpreted in the world of acts and facts. But nobody will ever consider, well, wait, the acts have happened to me have been misinterpreted. Because then you'd be face to face with, wait a minute. If they've been misinterpreted, if facts are misinterpreted, it's always somebody else. You know, CBS, the biased news, or my neighbor reported the facts, but boy, is he a gossip. So it's all right, facts to be misinterpreted, but if it's acts are misinterpreted, you're only left with one place to look. Where's that? You know, who misinterpreted the acts? Hey, don't look at me. Now back to where we were. You remember where that was. Assuming you can note that, then back to, or finally to, that kind of good old, personally, tacit question, nonverbal question, is once you can see what I'm just pointing out, which is just obvious as hell. You just can't go any further than realizing that that's the way life is being run in my nervous system. You just can't go any further like, yeah, and I don't like it. Or even a nonverbal, just your little limbic system go, when you realize, well, that's right. A lot of my fears, a lot of my apprehensions, I've never, now that you point out, it's not because that some tall person has actually ever manhandled me or even threatened me. Now I think about it, I bet somebody told me one time that most of our newspapers here in this city are owned by short people. They're the ones that's fed us this garbage to make me afraid of, boy, you can't go that far. That's not plain thought. That's not direct thought anymore. To be able to do this kind of thing, you simply see something and there is nothing else. There are no adjectives, there are no because, there are no, aha, I know what caused that. If you knew what caused that, you'd know what caused that. And you wouldn't be thinking about it. So back to, if you realize what I pointed out is a fact, that you have your life being driven by experience, and you have it being driven in part, in good part, by reports that you have never experienced. And you got to stop there, not, yes, and I don't agree with that. No! Or say, yes, and it's a good thing. No! Or yes, that is true, but perhaps the percentage, the weighting of it. Perhaps I am being driven, I'd say 70% by the reports, whereas it should. No! It's like, let somebody hand you a plate of rutabagas and just take them if it's going to be worth it. Don't look at it and don't even say, well, I'll be damned, it's rutabagas. That's not plain thought. If you're ever going to hear anything new, if you're ever going to see it yourself, you can't see it because that is a revolutionist act, to see something on the third dimension. But it's no longer if you look at it and go, oh my God, I just saw a so-and-so. You may have, but it's gone now. Well, that's a parade. Well, I'll be damned, you're right. And then later you think, but when I first saw it, I thought it was something else. That's why so many people have these feelings of like deja vu going obliquely sideways. Because people think, well, now I've thought some of this before, but the first time I thought it, I thought, boy, I'm onto something. And it was gone like that. It was gone like that because somebody handed you some rutabagas and you went, it doesn't matter how you go, but you went some way. That is, you went, ooh! Or you went, ah! Or you went, what the hell is that? It's all over then. All you got's rutabagas, and you could have had something, may I suggest. Well, at least better than rutabagas. I'll try to be conservative. So, back to where we were again. Here we go. Is to ask yourself if you can see the distinction. And you can see it, but if you can see it and withhold comment. If you can see this new act without making it a new fact. Yes, but ordinary intelligence say, here we go off the track again. Yes, but ordinary intelligence say, that's the whole point. It's to get some new facts. Why do I keep listening to this stuff? I want some new facts. Okay, assuming that you can confront the possibility of new acts without the necessity for having it friggin' explained to you. And I don't mean by me. So, assuming that you can see the difference, now back to the individual nonverbal inquiry, is to ask yourself this, as usual, as to what possible ends. To what possible ends is life arranged? Let's get very specific and up to date. It appears to be good, hard, tangible. To what possible ends right now has life arranged itself in man? It's arranged for this dramatic, just ever increasing onslaught and apparent dependence upon the so-called age of information. Or even more specific, worldwide news coverage. They should just change I know they try to include exchange of information having to do with business and et cetera, but instead of just calling it the age of information nowadays, they might as well be still a proprietary term. We just refer to it as the age of CNN. Literally, it's just the world of, the domain of worldwide, almost instantaneous news. That right now, if one country has trouble with one of their republics, and there's fighting out in the streets, and it was midnight on the other side of the world in Mongolia, God forbid the nice peace-loving Mongolians ever get it in for one another, and something happens, CNN, it may take them, I picked out a hell of a place, but even CNN, it might take them a few hours to get there. But they'll get there, and sure as hell, bounce up the satellite, and you can look and see almost instantaneous. Of course, once they get there, you can see it instantaneously, what's going on. And you can sit there, and being a sophisticated, worldly wise person, you can go, Mongolia. Holy Jesus. You know, I'd been worried about the Baltics trying to split off from Mother Russia, worried about the troubles down in the Persian Gulf, and I never thought, Mongolia. So here it is, something new. What do they call it in the city? Something new to worry about. No, let's don't put it that way. Something new, something additional for an educated news aficionado to think about. In fact, I'll get out my atlas. I know where Mongolia is. I can almost pronounce the capital of it. But I'll look it up, and they're saying that, you know, some of the troubles. Anyway, I got my map. I'll look at it. I'll become more conversant again. Because I shouldn't be surprised. I just hadn't thought about it. But Mongolia, even though it has, for the last several decades, so I've read, that is, the facts I have told me that they have, in a sense, tried a kind of socialistic, independent path from both Mother China and Mother Russia. I should have been aware that they would even be trying to flex even more of their nascent democratic muscles, blah, blah, blah. To what possible ends is life now arranged more and more every day to where we are, and when I say subjective to, again, this is not a pejorative observation. We are apparently dependent upon this ever-increasing, almost instantaneous flood of news, which is facts. One more time, at least right now, I'll do it. If this was ordinary intelligence, and it might say, well, wait a minute, that can be worthwhile. I mean, if you're making some comment like, if you're trying to make a sarcastic observation about people sitting around and glued to their TV and getting all upset about what's happening in Mongolia, whereas it's going to have no effect on them, that's a cheap shot, because some of what I get from the news, now we're on the brink of having 24-hour stock activities, and I have a nice little nest egg in stocks here and there, and the more I get tied into, and the more they develop this almost instantaneous electronic 24-hour stock trading, I may start moving some of my monies and my investments, maybe even to the Tokyo Exchange or the London Exchange, because that will be possible. But don't give me this crap that you're kind of laughing at what's going on in outer Mongolia when their gross national product is less than that of Mississippi. You know, it doesn't bother me. I don't wish them any harm. But a lot of the news, by God, affects my pocketbook. I mean, it can make me money or lose me money. It's important. It's all important. But to what possible ends now? Nothing's wrong, and as all of you should know, we're about all on the same footing, more or less, in relative sense, across this planet now. But again, to take an arbitrary but a worthwhile picturization, if we were talking about hermits, if there were a real isolated people, if you could really isolate parts of your own DNA, your own nervous system, that could still talk, what if we were talking about even your grandparents' day? or you younger bastards, your grandparents do. Somebody living out on a farm. Way out on the plains, up in the mountains of Idaho, the Appalachians, just your grandmother and your grandfather. They might go for months and never see anyone else. They lived, as witnessed by the fact you're here. But the fact is, there was news going on. Let's say, after the Civil War, if we're going to use the United States, late 1700s. Let's say it was a relative amount of calm, but even back then, if it hadn't been calm, if there were wars going on here in the United States, they might not even know about it. Or if they did know about it, it could be months later. But how about the things going on the other side of the world? And I can go through this, you can too, and I can prove it had an effect. Things they did not know about. Wars going on in Europe, in countries they'd never even heard of, perhaps. No offense to your great-great-grandparents. Things going on that would end up affecting them in their lifetime, having to do with trade, having to do with whether they receive certain goods. And they may know where they came from. They just once a year they go down, they drive in to the nearest settlement, and there are things they have to get, and they might go in there 6 months after an event had happened in Europe. A monarch being shot, some sort of civil unrest in the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, the old remnants of the Ottoman Empire, something they didn't even know about and could affect them. But notice, as far as the act of their life, there they are going along, let's say 6 months at least, at a whack. And they have no knowledge of anything going on outside their farm, outside the holler in which they live, outside the plains upon which they are now making their living and dreaming about having you and your mother and father. But they have no facts about what's going on. They get up and they live by acts. Can we go back again and say if ordinary intelligence was listening to this, they'd go, oh, so you're saying we should go back to... Oh, all right, you're not saying that. You're saying it's a good thing that we got... No. Pardon the dramatics. Just simply realize, it's not difficult whatsoever, that all over this planet for many, 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 many generations, but as recently as your grandparents perhaps, that they were living for extended periods of time, 6 months, let's say, is a good period, with no knowledge of facts. All they had knowledge of were their acts. If a tall person came wandering down into their holler, walking out across their plain, the first time they ever saw a tall person, but let us say, 50 miles away in an urban area, even in the 1700s, in that certain area, the closest settlement to where your great-great-grandparents, that tall people had a reputation now of being dangerous, potential muggers of farmers and other decent folk. But your great-great-grandparents out there didn't know that. And so here comes a tall person strolling through the corn and the wheat out there. Well, they know. But ordinary intelligence could say, well, that could be, the lack of their knowledge could be at their expense. It could be. But notice they had no facts to go on. The only thing they had to live on were the facts. The acts of what happened, the experience. Not good, not bad, it's not green, it's not hot, it's not 3.5 yards, nor is it measured in kilometers. And it's definitely not plaid. And I don't think that it's on sale. Do you follow? An act is an act. Anything else said about it is a fact. If it's weighed, if it's measured, if it's painted, if it's analyzed, if it's spoken of, it's then not only an act, but it's an act, and that which follows an act. A fact. But you could live, as people did, and you still do, in your own hollers, now in your own plains, somewhere in everyone's nervous system there is still that which operates by and large on the basis of acts and not facts, it would no longer be sufficient, and it is certainly in no way preferable. But you can simply see that within the space of your lifetime, almost, within reasonable history, people lived with almost no facts, relatively speaking, compared to the acts. Now, it would be impossible, it would seem, to live on that basis. And you can't just stay physical and say, well, who in the hell would want to live out by themselves, just me and a sexual partner, me and a husband or a wife, and just, who wants to do that? I didn't say you wanted to do that. Do you realize that it is just constructively impossible now? You have got to have facts. You've got to have news. And of course, ordinary intelligence say, well, we already been through that crap. You need news. All right. Be more direct. To what possible ends is life arranged to where it is now so much of an inescapable part of your thoughts of life, your feel for life, your expectations of life and other people's behavior is based not on experience, not on acts, but on facts. That is, purported reports of life's acts, of other people's acts. Well, real plainly, try it this way. Doesn't change what we were just trying to point out, but real plainly, you guys, what purpose do facts of all kinds, everything from the news on TV to gossip, and I don't mean gossip in a pejorative sense. I mean, if you're standing on a street corner and somebody goes running by and you say, what are you running for? And they tell you some story. Like, well, there's a riot going on. There's an army coming. Or there's a recession down the street. If we don't run, it may catch up. Whatever it is. That's what I mean by gossip is all the way from what seems to be official news reports. We now break into our regular programming for an official news report from official news reporting people. And a guy says, I'm an official reporter from the official home office. All the way from that to just somebody going down the street saying, hey, you better get out of here. All of that is included in facts. In other words, you're staying there and somebody is purporting to tell you facts related to some acts. They don't tell facts about facts. Well, they do, but that does not change people's behavior normally. They tell you, hey, get out of here. And if you said, why? And they just try to give you facts about facts. And they said, well, it's my theory that there are invisible people living on Mars, and I feel like they may arrive tonight, and so I'm going to get on a bus and leave town, and my advice to you is to do so. If you're a sane person, you think, boy, talk about a biscuit brain. Get out of here. But you're inclined to give it a certain better hearing if somebody's walking by and kind of looking disturbed, and you say, what's going on? They say, somebody down the street just got attacked. There's a gang of hoodlums, a bunch of tall people, and they're down there and they're mugging people, and I'm going to get out of here. In other words, they're reporting facts based upon acts. You might go, well, I didn't want to see that show anyway. Wait up, I think I'll go with you. Back to what I was going to say was even more plainly, if you want to try it this way, is what purpose do facts, all the way from news to gossip, anything other than an act, back regarding the matter of acts and facts, then anything that's not a fact is an act. Then to what possible purpose, what ends do facts serve in their effect on man's intellect? It is not only acts that affect your life, it is now my inference being for you to see for yourself that no sense to put a absolute percentage, but in large part your life is now directed. Your thinking of life, and your behavior is affected in large part. 50% wouldn't be an unwarranted number. By facts instead of acts, by actual experience, It's being affected by reports of other people's experience. To what purpose does the increasing predominance and preeminence of facts, what is it serving in its effect on man's mind? What purpose is being served on the wider scale of life? Of course, well, then that's another question or another consideration is to see the effect it does have on your mind. A few people could consider, if you see, assuming you see some of this, that you could consider a certain practical aspect, a use of this. And I could put it pretty plainly and say, if you see this, then a real revolutionist might I suggest, might want to rearrange a certain aspect of his own behavior. That is, if a real revolutionist is going to go on and dislike somebody, then might I suggest that they do it on the basis of the other people's acts, if you're going to do it. And not on the basis of their purported, that is, the facts regarding their reported acts and misdeeds. It's just unbecoming. If you ever see this, because if you ever really see it, I don't have to suggest this because you just can't do it otherwise. But if you want to see this, my suggestion is going to be, if you're going ahead and dislike them, somebody, at least do it on the basis of their acts. Don't be a damn sissy. Don't be an ordinary person. Everybody dislikes everybody else on the basis of their facts. That is, the reports about them or even their own admissions. That yes, we believe that God's a tall person. That's the basis of our religion. And of course you and your kin being right, thinking, decent people, you understand God's a short guy. If you're going to be part of that, and you're part of the short people religion or nationality, you're going to dislike the people who follow the tall God. But if you're going to be a real revolutionist, don't do that. Anybody can do that, as if anybody had a choice. If you're going ahead and dislike, if you're tall, if you're going ahead and dislike the short people, at least dislike them for short acts. Don't dislike them for short facts. Jesus. To say that that's being a sissy is to put it nicely and not to use language that they don't like for me to use on tape. Starts with, well, I can tell you what it starts with. Some of you would figure it out. And then it might in some way get on tape that the vibrations of you going, ah! And it could show up electronically. If you're going to be annoyed, if you're going to dislike somebody, you understand there is a certain kind of thing, I can call it, I guess, is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but you can't put your tongue in a three-dimensional cheek and come out with this. But if you're going to dislike somebody, if you're going to be annoyed at other people, by God, do it on the right basis. Do it on a real person basis, a real man basis, a real revolutionist basis. Dislike those bastards for some reason that they deserve it, for their acts. Because, if you're going to dislike them, there's got to be an actual basis, right? Actual, like from the root word act. That you go ahead and dislike them for a real reason. Not those old phony crap. And I say phony on the basis that everybody dislikes everybody else on the basis of the facts. Why not put up with this kind of stuff unless you're going to try to be different? Dislike them, hate them, be annoyed at them, but do it at least on the basis of their acts, not their facts. That's already covered. Jesus. All right. Still trying for a present temporary wrap-up of some of this. I was going to tell you one more thing. There's a little tale. There was this world one time that in the matter of facts follow acts, they had what they considered to be the absolute exemplary, wouldn't be an exemplary example, would it? Well, it could be. Primo example of facts follow acts. And you know what their example was? Their example of their living, manifold, operational reality of the theorem, facts follow acts. The example that they loved, they held it close to their little bosoms, was in telling what kind of guy you are. Do I have to do the punchline for you? It is a brilliant example. It is brilliant to the point that it makes you want to wear shades. Facts follow acts, because in telling what kind of guy one is, the fact of telling what kind of guy one is comes long after what one is. Over in the Amen corner, as a matter of fact, it might have picked up on tape. Over in the Amen corner, some guy, he's either tall or short, just muttered. I'm going to try to quote it. It didn't pick up there. Anyway, he said that the time he heard us point out, a long time ago, if you remember, this is about what he said. I'm quoting. He said that when he heard us note, now quote within a quote, when he heard it noted that the intellect was the last to know, he said he didn't know that meant him.